Hi guys, welcome back. This is Matt Chat episode 563, featuring an interview with Mr. Brett Weiss. Now, Brett is the author of over a dozen books about retro gaming and retro gaming systems and consoles and the industry. He's got a lot of great stuff. He's also got a lot of great stories about how he wrote all those books and stuff he learned along the way. I know you're going to enjoy this, so without further ado, here is Mr. Brett Weiss.
Well, it's good to meet you, Brett. You got a lot of books.
Yeah, I got a baker's dozen and counting. That's kind of an outdated term, but I think maybe us old guys know what it means.
Yeah, well, if you know what a Fairchild F is.
Yeah, right.
Probably heard the term. So yeah, but how you doing? Oh, look at your shirt there.
Yeah.
It's from a retro gal. Love that.
So I Googled your name and I'm like, okay, this name sounds familiar. And I realized you wrote some books with Bill. How do you say his last name?
LeJudas.
LeJudas. I was going to say that, but that sounded
like
weird.
Judas of Borg. It's LeJudas of Borg.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Right. Yeah. So I've known Bill for a long time. He actually recommended me for a History Channel gig. The toys that made us or machines that made us some kind of history of the NES. So he recommended me to the History Channel. And so they flew me up to New York and stuff. So big thanks to Bill for that.
Oh yeah, I had a good time with I got the book right here. I don't know if you've ever come across it, but
I have seen that. Yes.
You know, we kind of operate in similar veins. I feel like
right.
Two consoles passing in the night.
Right. And unlike certain authors that won't be named, I see this as sort of just a big community and not competition.
No. No, it's not really that kind of a game. I always thought it was the more books you have out there about the topic, the better, because it just creates a bigger market for everybody.
Yeah, when I started doing this in 2000, the first book I had was published in 2007. The retro gaming book market was barely a thing. Van Burnham had her book. Leonard Herman had a couple of books. David Sheff, there were a few, but not many.
I remember reading that Kent book and
oh yeah.
Stephen Levy, I think, had a hacker or something like that. I remember I read that and I'm like, I love this so much. I want to write something like this, but about games. And
right.
I kind of touched off my sort of writing, but yeah, I was kind of curious how your experience would compare to mine doing this, because I remember there was I feel like I kind of peaked sometime like in 06, 07. There's like a movie and it sounded like you went to the History Channel. I don't know when that was, but it felt like things were exploding and there's going to be all this stuff about game books and game history and stuff. And then it's kind of I don't know. Has it been like that for you, or has it just kept going up, or what?
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of gaming books on the market now. There's a lot of self-published stuff in addition to the stuff and some of the self-published stuff is really good. Then there's some stuff by, professional publishers. So the competition is definitely out there. There's a lot of competing space for the dollar, and not every gamer wants to read, so there's a lot of, there's a lot of gamers just aren't interested in a book. So I started doing YouTube as well. And so that's kind of helped, as far as
what I thought. Yeah, that's pretty much my experience, because I did that. We had that Armchair Arcade page with Bill, actually.
Yeah.
We all kind of, it was a guy named Buck. That was all the rage there for a while. Then I did some books, and but yeah, I kind of came to the same conclusion that you just sounded there. Like, well, gamers probably would rather watch something than read something.
Typically, and like a lot of the gamers,
I'm a writer by heart. I like to write more than I do working on videos. But.
Right. Well, a lot of the gamers I know are very intelligent. They know a lot about technology and they're real good at modding systems and stuff. Very smart. But that doesn't necessarily translate to a lot of them enjoying the act of reading a book about video games. So it doesn't necessarily say anything about their intelligence. Just shows maybe they're just for entertainment or whatever, they might want to watch a video instead of reading a book.
Yeah, I do some of my work, some of the classes I teach here at St. Cloud State are game studies classes, and a lot of the students are really amazed at like the concept of like academically studying games,
Right. Yeah.
because it kind of brought up, you talked about this. I was reading in the prologue of one of your books here. I'll see if I can bring it up here in a minute, but you're kind of talking about how it sort of conflicted with studying, and people say, even said you had a doctor that was, or surgeon general, I think, quoted, that was saying games are hazardous to a kid's health, and
Yeah. And
they're kind of grown up in that mindset, and
yeah,
to
this was
find
during
out.
the era when like Galaga was the most violent game on the market for consoles, and for, in just a general arcade, you would walk in, the most violent game you could see was, something that was just sort of impressionistic, just shooting things. And even then, people were crying that, violent video games are going to lead to real world violence, even in those innocent days.
Yeah, I think I got the book here. So what is this one? Classic video games, 1972 to 84.
Yeah, my very first book.
Yeah, so this is McFarlane and Company. That's, I believe that's an academic
Yes.
publisher. Yeah, I have to pick your brain at some point about what it's like working with them.
Well, this was their very first book that was devoted specifically to video games. And now they've got a huge entire wing of their publishing industry, or their publishing arm, doing video game books. But this was the first one.
So this was 2007?
Yeah. Yeah, prior to that, they'd done one on computers or something, but this was really their first video game book.
Well, I just think, Brad, if you'd listened to C. Everett Koop.
Yeah, those were the days.
So yeah, you've said about a dozen of these books, I guess. With they're not. Are they all with this publisher, or have you bounced around?
No, I actually switched publishers. The first three books I did, classic home video games, they were McFarlane publishers. And then I did one about the rock band KISS, an encyclopedia on the band.
Oh yeah, I got some questions people sent in about that.
Yeah, that was
I probably got more
McFarlane
questions
as
about
well.
KISS than anything. We're going to be talking about games, folks. But yeah, you got okay. Well, why don't we talk about it now? So how did this happen?
Sure. So I was reading the autobiographies of each band member, Ace, Gene, Paul, and Peter. I was reading their various autobiographies, and it occurred to me that no one had ever written a full-on encyclopedia about the band. All the big iconic bands like the Grateful Dead, the Stones, the Beatles, Elvis, all the big, really big bands that everybody knows, there's an encyclopedia, at least one, usually more than one, but no one had ever done one on KISS. So when I pitched the idea to McFarlane, they loved the idea. They just had a few stipulations. They didn't want their picture on the cover because they figured Gene might be litigious, and we couldn't use the band's logo on the cover. But other than that, it went really well. It's just an entire history of the band, sort of encyclopedia form. Their TV and movie appearances, their albums, their songs, their significant others, their important family members, that kind of thing. Merchandise, just everything about KISS. Hardcore fan since 1975.
Yeah, I thought you might have pitched this directly to Gene, because I believe he's got this tons and tons of the memorabilia and stuff like that, right? Doesn't he?
Well, yeah, it's funny because so he wants everything. He wants one of everything, at least, of KISS. So he's the biggest KISS collector. He collects at least one of everything, and he actually tweeted out this book 2 or 3 years ago with it sitting on top of a FedEx package. So either he had his person mail him one when he found out about it, or a fan or somebody sent him one. And his only comment in the tweet was HMMM ... He was just like, what is this?
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that was
ask
pretty
if you got to
exciting.
meet any of the band.
I got to meet Paul Stanley twice back in the 1990s after concerts. We would follow back in the 80s after shows. When we were teenagers and early 20s, we would follow these bands around. Like we would go to the nearby hotels from the venue and just see if we could happen to meet them, walking around the halls or in the lobby or something. And it worked out really well. I met Paul Stanley twice. I met the late great Eric Carr, who had taken Peter Criss's place as their drummer. We met him, and I met Ace once. I was covering a Comic-Con for a new, a publication, and I just wanted to get a press photo. And I met him briefly, and he gave me the thumbs up. His patented thumbs up. He just died recently, so that was really rough because hardcore fan, and he was my favorite band member by far. I just thought he was the
I know
coolest.
Ace passed away just maybe a
Yeah,
week or two ago,
just a
right?
few days ago. Yeah, and it
Wow.
was rough. It was a tough one for me, and and that was coming on the heels of Ozzy, my favorite of all time. So that was a rough little stretch there.
I'm probably a little more of an Ozzy fan. That was yeah, I don't normally get too upset when somebody famous if I don't have like a personal relationship.
Yeah,
It's like, well, of course you're sad, but it's not like doesn't really hit me. But something about Ozzy just really got to me.
yeah. He was just such a likable character, and he was a character, And we did meet Ozzy back in '86. We followed his tour bus to a place called the Iron Skillet outside of Fort Worth. This greasy spoon. We followed their tour bus because we saw this giant fancy tour bus after the show. We hung out there, and about an hour after the show, it took off from the venue, the Tarrant County Convention Center in downtown Fort Worth. And we followed them about an hour outside of town, and their bus pulled off the highway to stop at this restaurant. They switched buses, and because they were just going to switch tour buses for whatever reason, and so that while they were packing all the gear to the next bus, Ozzy, Sharon, and the rest of the band, the band members, Jakey Lee, Rudy Sarzo, I believe it was, and another. It was a long time ago. They went inside the Iron Skillet, so I got to meet them, get my picture with them and stuff. And
Oh wow.
yeah, I did a video on that, and I posted that on Facebook a few times, because it was a really big deal. And I even asked Ozzy if he wanted to play Pac-Man.
Did he?
Because back in the 80s, every place you would go to had arcades. And so there was a Pac-Man machine out in the lobby of the Iron Skillet. And while we were kind of meeting them and getting their autographs and taking pictures, there was a Pac-Man machine. And I held up 2 quarters and I said, "Hey, Ozzy, do you want to play Pac-Man?" He goes, "I don't play." There it is, my Bark at the Moon t-shirt.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite moments of the Spinal Tap movie, which nobody ever talks about. But that scene where they're in the tour bus and the drummers or the keyboardist is playing some kind of crazy game. Well, I'm really
Yeah,
jealous. Wow. So is that you there?
yes, it is.
Bark at the Moon. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that was me at the ripe old age of 19.
Yeah, I mean, you look like you could have slung on a guitar and just
Well, I'm a poser. The only thing I can play is the stereo. But yeah, that's the
Wow.
concert ticket we went to. And earlier in that day, we met Metallica at Sound Warehouse, a record store. Yeah, that's them at the end of the show there. Ozzy, it was the Ultimate Sin tour, and Metallica, it was their Master of Puppets tour.
Oh my God.
Just an incredible show. Yeah, there's me and Jakey Lee, the guitarist that took Randy Rhoads' place after he died. Yeah, it was an incredible night. Yeah, there's Metallica pictures on the bottom right there.
Yeah, that was right. So was it there during the Master of Puppets? That was like them at their
Yes.
prime, really.
Yeah, incredible stuff.
I don't know if you could have picked. I think that would have been my. If I could pick any of them, that would have been
Yeah,
the one, the era.
that was an incredible double bill, Ozzy and Metallica at that time.
Oh man, you are lucky.
Yeah. Well, back then
Wow.
it was a lot easier to meet famous people. You just kind of hung around where they were playing, and they didn't have meet and greets. They didn't have paid. That wasn't a thing yet in the '80s that I know of. I never saw it, and so you could just kind of hang around hotel lobbies, follow tour buses, just kind of. If you kind of had an idea where they might be, you might get lucky and see them around. I never met Gene. The times I met, I stalked Kiss. Basically, Gene wasn't around. He was probably up in the hotel with a groupie. But
Wow.
but Paul was really cool.
Yeah, and I've never run into anybody that famous.
Right.
I think
I'm sure Ozzy's
sometimes
the
I run
most
into the
famous person I
pillow
ever met.
guy, being in
What's that?
Minnesota. But the only famous person I ever run into is the pillow guy from the
Oh, My Pillow.
no, yeah, that My Pillow guy.
Oh no.
We see him around town
Oh, because
sometimes.
he's in the same town as you.
He lives in the state. I guess he travels
Uh,
around or something.
oh, that's funny.
like every now and then you'll be in a, well, it's only happened once, but we were in a
Okay.
curtain. It's
Right.
like, is that the guy from those commercials over there? And here you are, like, yeah, I met the Ozzy and
Yeah. Right.
Metallica. Yeah, but it was, I mean, it's always, I have to stop and think sometimes about how different it is for the kids that grow up nowadays with cell
Yeah.
phones and all this stuff, and like
Hmm.
have no conception. I mean, how could they?
Yeah. Yeah. It was a different world. You had to get a map to figure out where you were going, a physical paper map or a Mapsco. And if you were going to meet a friend somewhere, you had to plan the time hours in advance and just hope they show up. You had no way to contact them if you were both out of your house,
Oh yeah.
that kind of thing. It was like the wild, it was the Wild West.
Yeah, somebody was telling me a story the other day about they went to they were going somewhere and their friend thought that they were asleep in the back. They
Hmm.
went to a gas station and they went into use the bathroom and they didn't realize that person had gone, so they drove off,
Hmm.
leaving that person behind.
Yeah. You don't know. Yeah.
That stuff
Nobody
would
contacts
happen,
them.
and you had no way to like call them and say,
Right.
"Hey, come back."
Yeah. Or if you're running late to something, you don't have any way to tell them. They're just going to be out of luck or just sit there and wait.
But to come back to this Kiss book for a minute, I'm kind of curious with so you've done all these games books and everything.
Hmm.
So how is are you getting more comments and more reviews, more sales with this one, or is it, how would you compare it?
It's done pretty well. My top selling books are probably my 100 greatest books. Although the omnibus books have done well too. They're probably comparable, but I do so many gaming conventions that I hand sell a lot more of the video game books since I do so many shows.
I think that's where you met my uh, assistant producer, Matt Bradley Shergy, met you at one of those, I think.
Hmm.
I talked to you.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm always kind of a little curious about the taking these kinds of books to conventions. I've thought about it a few times, but I just was
Hmm.
thinking, like, how does basically do the finances work out? So you probably had to buy so many advance copies, and then, or does the publisher handle the?
Okay, so yeah, it's publishers typically give authors about 40 to 45% off of the books they purchase. And if you self-publish the books, your discounts are, even bigger. But luckily McFarland and Schiffer will ship books, like drop ship to books free of charge. And like if I order enough titles, enough books, they will ship free of charge, and I can have them shipped to the convention itself. And
Oh,
sometimes convention promoters, I can have the book shipped directly to them. But if those convention promoters are too busy or they don't want to hassle with it, I will ship them to a friend of mine that's driving to the show, so they can drive the books in. If it's a show I'm flying to, I can fit some paperbacks in my luggage here and there. But these hardcovers, I'll have them shipped, to someone that's driving to the show. And it typically works out pretty well. Now, sometimes I'll have a few books left over. Typically, I can wholesale those to stores that are set up at the shows and that they can, sell the books in their stores, like
hmm.
Kelsey Lewin with Pink Gorilla. Anytime I do the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, if I have books left over, I can just sell them to her to put in her stores. So it works out really well.
Yeah, you almost have to have like as much business skills as you do writing skills enough.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
I wouldn't know how many copies to order. I just have this nightmare of
Hmm.
having like 500 copies of a book, sitting around and
Yeah, it's you need to order to sell out, and
I
you
guess
need
just to
to
figure out how big the convention is, and then
yeah, right. And it just takes, I'll track all the books I sell at a show, and I'll just keep a stack of all the, I'm sure most people would do it online, but I'm an old guy and I just have a stack of paper and I'll track how many books I sell at each show. And then when that same show comes up the next year, I'll kind of bring a similar amount. But even then, it's not guaranteed. I might sell out of one particular title and then completely not sell any of that same book at the next show. So it's a little hit and miss on how many copies I can sell.
Do you
And
get
so, yeah,
tired of like talking to people at those things? I mean, what's it like on the other side of the table? Because I've
it can be a little
I've been the guy
draining.
that's asking the questions and stuff, but what's it like to be in your position?
It can be draining. I really enjoy talking to people about retro games, so it's a lot of fun, and I definitely stay caffeinated. By the end of some shows, I'll be a little hoarse, but so far I'm still enjoying it. Now, is it as exciting as it was 5 to 10 years ago? No, but it's still a lot of fun, and it's always fun to see friends at these shows. And moving forward, I'm probably going to do a show here and there, like Retropalooza coming up. Fort Worth show. I don't know if you're familiar with that show. It's put on by the Game Chasers, the YouTubers. Sadly, Billy, one of the Game Chasers, just died recently.
Oh,
Um, anyway, Jay with the Game Chasers puts on Retropalooza. They're not interested in having me as a guest, which is fine, but it's ironic because it's the closest show to my house. But anyway, I've been a vendor at that show many times, but this year I've decided just to go on Saturday only, just to have fun, shoot some YouTube footage, and just kind of hang out and have a good time. Yeah, there you go, December 13th and 14th. I will be there most of the day Saturday, just walking around, hanging out. So yeah, but the show this coming weekend, if you want to show that one, is the Houston Art. Yeah, Billy on the left, on my left there, the taller guy with the flannel. He passed away just recently, very unexpectedly.
yeah, it doesn't look like he can't be maybe 40 something,
Oh
right?
yeah, he's in his 40s, big strong guy, but he just had a fluke. He had some kind of
Oh,
brain
terrible.
cancer or brain tumor, and he passed away within a month of the diagnosis.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it's awful. But yeah, I'm sure they're going to pay tribute to him at the show in December. But this coming weekend, I'm doing the Houston Arcade Expo. That's going to be a fantastic show. That's November 14th through the 16th. And man, talk about fun. This is one of the most fun shows every year because it's just a big party. Yes, there you go. This is a crazy show because the arcade is open till 2 a.m., but usually it's really till about 3 or 4. There's a lot of partying that goes on. There's live music. Bow Wow Wow, the 80s band, is going to be there that did I Want Candy. Last year it was Wang Chung. And
I thought it would be that Pac-Man Fever group would be more.
that would be great. It would be awesome if they would have Buckner Garcia. I think one of them died, Buckner Garcia. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah,
but they
it's
do gaming related music as well. They do electronic music and stuff. But the guy that runs it, he likes pop and rock. So he's tried to get the Flock of Seagulls out there. But I'm doing a panel at that show Saturday morning at 10:30 about the 10 most magical gaming consoles. But yeah, it's a 3-day show, and I'll have my books and T-shirts and all that stuff out there, and it's phenomenal. It's just a big party. A lot of vendors stay there open till after midnight. It's totally crazy. There's a lot of drinking that goes on and just carousing and craziness. There's a cool swap meet on that Saturday morning. Yeah, it's a
you're out
nutty
of Fort,
show.
you're in
And
Fort Worth, I believe I saw.
yeah, it's in Houston, the Houston Arcade Expo. Yeah, I'm in Fort Worth, so it's about a little over about a 4-hour drive from Fort Worth to Houston. So I love shows I can drive to, like in Austin, Fort Worth, Dallas, San Antonio. I can just load up my vehicle and take books. I don't have to worry that much about having any left over because I can just throw them back in the car.
Oh, I've
So
been to
that's
Houston a
always a
lot of
fun time.
times. I went to college in Natchitoches, Louisiana, so
Oh,
Houston
okay.
was like, we'd frequently go there for stuff. It was
Yeah,
kind of
Houston is
nice.
massive, and there's always something going
I
on.
don't know there's a pretty big retro gaming scene in Texas, sounds like.
Yeah, especially Dallas Fort Worth. There's a ton of arcades. The thing about Dallas Fort Worth, there's all these really big suburbs that into themselves are sort of like their own community. So there are so many free play arcades all over the place, barcades, you name it. And there's also the National Video Game Museum in Frisco, which is north of Dallas. There's the Game Chasers. Well, now it's just Chaser after Billy passed, but they're based in the Dallas Fort Worth area. There's just big retro scene here. There's a ton of great retro gaming stores. So yeah, it's crazy. The biggest one in Texas is just uh, in Fort Worth, Founded Electronics. So yeah, it's an amazing community. And there's the Texas Retro Gamer Society, which is a really tight knit group. They have meetups every month. So yeah, it's a great area for retro games.
Wow, yeah, we don't have anything. Well, there might be something like this that I'm just not aware of.
Well, it's all over the place here for whatever reason. It's a great place for the arcade and console scene.
I remember I was really blown away when I went to Las Vegas because I'm not
Hmm.
into gambling,
Right.
but I was there for another thing, and there I kept my friends were like, "Well, there's all these pinball arcades and
Yeah, the
all stuff
pinball
like
museum
that."
is
And yeah, the
gigantic.
pinball
Pinball
museum was
museum is there.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it's really wild.
Yeah, I gotta start doing some of these conventions and stuff.
Yeah, it'd be cool if you set up an author with your books
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff.
so they were like, I always talk with Matt Bradley Shergi about we ought to do a panel,
Hmm.
get together with some other folks like yourself. And I said we could put together a panel here or there. So,
Yeah, most of these gaming websites, these game conventions will have a contact that you can, if you have any panel ideas or if you want to pitch yourself as a guest, you can just send in your credentials and your panel idea and then, just roll
and
the
how hard
dice.
is it to
See.
get into something like that? Is it?
It's easier for me now since I'm kind of more of a familiar face. It was a little tougher a few years ago when people didn't know who I was as much. But it helps to know people. It helps to come up with some really interesting panel ideas. It helps to make a good pitch your idea, pitch who you are. And some are tough to crack. Some like Too Many Games, they had me and Leonard Herman out one time, and the only thing they would offer is a table and a booth, a table for us to share and a booth. No travel expenses or anything. But
Mm.
so I flew up to Lenny's, and then we stayed at his uncle's house, who lived fairly close to the convention center, so it worked out. But different conventions will offer you different things, and these days, I will mostly only do shows that offer me a pretty good uh, incentive, like travel expenses and a booth and a panel and everything. But it can vary, just depending on the venue and or the convention and everything. But typically they'll pay for travel expenses, and because they want you out there to do some kind of panel and for people to come bring books for me to sign or just to buy them at the show or whatever. So it works out great. I have a lot of fun doing it. It's exhausting sometimes, especially for these 3-day shows. And I'm doing PAX East in Boston for my day job next year. And then I just did PAX West recently, and those are 4-day shows. So those are
Wow.
pretty grueling.
Wow.
I think 2 days is that sweet spot.
Yeah, I noticed one of your books here just kind of caught my eye because it's a little different.
Hmm.
So you got a book about query letters.
Yeah, so at these shows, I get asked time and time again writing tips, publishing tips. How do you get your stuff published? What is the secret behind your success and all that stuff? And so I decided just 50 of my published query letters that actually led to paying sales. I reprinted those in the book and I added like intros, like just a little background information on the pitch. And these are basically letters I wrote to publishers with ideas I had on articles. And there's even a couple of chapters in there on book query letters, like how I got a publisher interested in a book idea. And people have bought this book based on other criteria as well. Like I've had people buy this book that were musicians or that were artists or that were even actors that wanted to approach. It's a similar thing. You want to approach, like, let's say you're an actor and you want to approach a talent scout or a manager
All right.
or a movie producer or a director. You want to tell them your idea and who you are and why you're good for this role or whatever. Well, that book tells you how to pitch your idea and then how to tell them who you are. And to put it in a nutshell, here's what you do. If you want to present your book idea or any other idea you're trying to sell yourself, you one paragraph with your idea, just blow them away with a great idea. And then the second paragraph, tell them who you are and why you are the one to do that job, to write that book, to write that article, or whatever. And because they don't want to read something that's multiple pages if they've never heard of you or don't know who you are or just don't know your idea or whatever. They want to read a capsule of your idea that's just going to knock them out, and then a capsule of who you are. Oh, well, you're obviously the person that should do this. So yeah, that's basically what the book's about.
That
And
sounds
it's also
good.
got just some general writing tips in there too.
I need to get a copy of this thing. I've written a lot of nonfiction
Mm-hmm.
books, but yeah, I've tried recently to break into the fiction world and
Oh,
just hit a brick wall with that.
it's tough. A lot of fiction writers are doing self-publishing these days, but it's
Yeah,
really
I think
hard to
you'll
get
find-
mass exposure with self-publishing. But I've written one book of fiction. It's a book of short stories. It's the arcade uh, with the KISS pinball machine on the cover.
Well, let's see if we can find that one.
Yeah, that one. It's a book of shorts. Yeah, there it is. The arcade and other
Oh,
strange
okay, I
tales.
didn't know this was a fiction book.
Yeah, so it's a book of short stories for the most part. Now, yeah, other strange tales. At the back of the book, there's some essays, but it's mostly fiction, and it's science fiction, horror, that kind of thing. And
Worm Boy.
the lead story takes place in a a classic arcade of the 80s and 90s. There's little time travel elements, and the KISS
It's got all
pinball
your favorite.
machine.
It's got all your favorite stuff here on the cover. I love this.
Yeah, the KISS pinball machine and Mortal Kombat both play significant roles in the longest and the lead story in the book.
Yeah, so this was.
And I was inspired. I grew up big Twilight Zone fan and Outer Limits and Stephen King and Rod
Yeah.
Serling and
So you've
Richard
got.
Matheson. Grew up a big fan of all of that.
Oh, that's the vampire story, right? The Last Man on Earth or something like that.
Yeah, Richard Matheson wrote Last
What's
Man
the
on
name
Earth.
of the book though? I got it right. I'm looking at it. I Am Legend. Yeah.
I Am Legend, yeah, and it was turned into uh, Omega Man with Charlton Heston as a film, and then The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price,
Yeah, I
and
love
then
all of them.
later with Will Smith, Last Man on Earth.
So it looks like you've got. I'm trying to blow this up a little bit so we can see the stories.
There
Oh,
is a vampire story in that book, and with a religious theme to it, which I found interesting to write about.
11. So you got 12 stories of fiction and then some
Yeah, just some
interviews and
essays and things like that at the back.
uncovering the mystery behind Stephen King's first published story.
Yeah, so he had before he got famous, he wrote some stories and some fanzines back in the day, fan-made magazines, including one published by Marv Wolfman, the famous comic book writer that wrote the X-Men and Crisis on Infinite Earths. And in Stephen King's own book, he got the information wrong about his first published short story. So I did an article for Antique Week correcting his misconception because I actually owned those fanzines at one time because I bought this big collection and I found the Stephen King stories and I sort of corrected a little bit of what King had written in that, but that's in that book too. So
Sure, he appreciated that.
yeah, it was just some fun. For him, it was decades ago, and he just remembered the best he could. But I was a teenage grave robber from space was his first story, and it was in one of those old fanzines.
Well, I didn't know that. I always thought it was like Carrie or something.
Yeah, that was an early novel, but as far as his first
He was
story
doing his
goes, it
dance.
dates back to those fanzines, and I don't even know if that one was ever officially published or not, but it did appear in a fanzine.
I've talked to a lot of different authors on this show over the years. A lot of them came up during like the 70s and 80s. And, they talked about like how much easier it was to publish something back then because you had all these magazines of fiction. You
Oh
had,
my gosh, yes,
you just mentioned like the zines were a huge
yeah,
thing. Maybe not make a ton of money, but it was a way to get your
right.
foot to the door.
Yeah, and there were fewer people trying to write in those days. Now everybody wants to be a writer, and but back then there were fewer people trying to do it. There were more outlets for writing. There were tons and tons of print publications, and when let's see, e-zines for a while there in the early 2000s, I believe, when online fiction publishing first really kind of became a big thing in the 90s and into the early 2000s. I thought there was going to be potentially, this another big explosion, a new golden age of science fiction with all this e-zine publishing. And that sort of just kind of fizzled out because it was a little diluted and convoluted and there was a lot of people publishing, mediocre to bad stuff. So that never did really become much of anything, but I did have a few stories published in these e-zines. Some of them also had print editions, just small press stuff. My claim to fame with fiction was having uh, a story in the same magazine as a guy named Bentley Little. He was popular in the 90s, and he wrote stuff that was kind of like Stephen King's work. And he wrote some really high selling books. He just never became a best selling name. He never became a household name, but he did have some really high selling books. Yeah, Bentley Little. He had some, his books sold like crazy in the 90s. And he's a great writer, but I had a story in a magazine where he had a story, and that was pretty exciting.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I interviewed him one time for Fangoria magazine, and that was a tough get because he doesn't use the computer, he doesn't use email. So I
Wait a
was,
minute, you were writing for Fangoria magazine?
yeah, I've had several articles published in Fangoria.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, that was exciting. And Film Facts, another magazine I've written quite a bit for.
Oh, yeah, Fangoria. I'm sure a lot of people watching this will remember that magazine.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and they're still they've come back with a new edition. It's like 20, it's like a square bound version that's published less often, and it's about $20. But they're still putting out Fangoria magazine. It's just a new, kind of edition.
Well, that's another industry that kind of has, I don't know if evolved is the right word. I'd almost say devolved.
Died, yeah.
Because all like the prosthetics and the plastics and the models and to me
Oh,
I just love that stuff. And then now it's just you just run the CGI and
yeah. There's nothing
uh,
like practical effects. I love the old movies,
yeah.
70s and 80s and six, where you have all these great practical effects, and the movies just have more charm and a great, look to them and a great feel to them. I miss that.
Yeah, I think a lot of them look more realistic than
Hmm. Yeah.
the later age. And people always think they look at me funny when I say stuff like that. I'm like, well, aren't you the tech guy? Aren't you the computer guy? I'm like, yeah, but yeah, it's all the artistry that was involved in making those movies. It's just been lost.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
don't
It's
know if
too
it's been
bad.
lost. I guess some of those folks are still around, but
Yeah, there's some independent publishers here and there, but as far as these mainstream releases, you're just going to see cartoons, which I call CGI. If it's real heavily CGI, you're just seeing animation, and it just doesn't have the same gravity as practical effects.
yeah. But I was thinking, Brett, when I was a kid, I always dreamed of like being a writer, like seeing my name on like a magazine and
Right.
working
Yeah.
in books and all that. But
Yep.
it
Same.
just feels like I don't know, is it just not as big of a deal anymore, or is it
Well,
what happened?
back in the day, so basically now everybody is a publisher, everybody's a writer because you type stuff on Facebook or you type stuff on Twitter or whatever. So everybody gets their name out there, everybody has written something that's visible. But back then, if you had your name in print somewhere, if you had your name
Right.
publicly somewhere, it actually meant something. And so that's kind of diluted what it means to be published or to be a writer or to be, anybody that is an aspiring writer can just have a blog or have a, social media post. And there's some advantages of that. There's some cool aspects of that, but it's not as special as it used to be. And with print being considered lame by a lot of young people, or just dead, or such a niche thing, it's not as special as it used to be, to have your name in print. When I started doing this in the 90s and had, when the internet was just tiny and a lot of people didn't even use it and there was no social media, those first few years I was writing and had, articles in Fangoria and Film Facts and the local newspaper and all these other avenues, even in the early 2000s. It was really cool. And I remember when I first started writing for the Comics Buyer's Guide back around 2000, 2001, somewhere around, I think it was 2000, maybe 90, yeah, probably 2000 or so. Anyway, when I got my first issue and saw my name in print with my reviews, that just blew my mind. That's been a quarter of a century ago, which just makes me insane. Time goes by too fast. But that was really exciting.
Yeah. I just remember how excited my dad was. We had a Commodore Amiga computer. He
Oh,
was
cool.
an electrician. He had figured out a way to make this little switch thing for the disk drive so you could
Hmm.
turn the second disk drive on and off. And they published his letter in the Amazing Computing magazine.
Oh, cool.
And like he was just that made his year.
Yeah, it was exciting to get your letters
I mean, he
published
was showing
too.
this to everybody, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh. But I don't know if we have any. I don't think that. Yeah, you can make a comment on a Facebook post or a blog or YouTube video, but I just don't think that carries the same cachet.
Right. And in general, getting published just doesn't seem to be as big of a deal because print is, print copies, they don't print as many as they used to. Whatever's in print now, books, newspapers, magazines, there just aren't as many. So your name doesn't get out there as much. And it's also diluted by all the online publishing. So yeah, it's not as big deal as it used to be published, but it's still pretty exciting to have like a book at Barnes and Noble. That's still a big deal. And it's still a big deal to have your name, with the mainstream press, publication. So but it's not magical quite like it used to be, but it's still nice.
Yeah, yeah, people might still think this. But I remember when I got this is my first book I had published.
Oh, cool.
Like Taylor and France or A.K. Peters published this, and
It looks great.
you always thought, well, my life will be forever changed now that I'm a published author.
Right.
People will, I will command a whole new level of respect. Nobody cares. I mean,
Yeah, it's funny because when this first starts happening and your first book comes out and stuff, certain people will care, but most don't. Like for most, it means nothing, and so it humbles you pretty fast. And
yeah, like your immediate fan, like your mom and stuff.
yeah, yeah, and some of your close friends and stuff, but a lot of them are just completely oblivious. You might as well just tell them you filled up your car with gas as you had a book published. It just doesn't mean a thing. Yeah.
We shouldn't be talking like this if we want to encourage the next generation to.
Well, hey,
Yes,
just
it was a game changer.
if you love it, do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you don't, maybe think of something else. But I was mostly so for over 20 years. I worked at home as a full-time freelancer and journalist and all that good stuff. And man, I had to scratch and claw and fight to get everything. There were like 3 years in a row where I had over 80 print articles published. And that's just print. That doesn't count the databases I worked on, the online articles, and all that stuff. And to get that many print articles in a year, over 80, is just nuts. That's a lot of research. That's a lot of pitching. That's a lot of
Yeah.
trying to get your name out there and trying to get publishers interested in what you're doing. And so yeah, it's even if most writers are in the trenches, just cranking out, stuff for their local paper or trying to get, eke out a living or whatever. The people, the writers that make big money are few and far between. So even at the height of publishing, print publishing, for most writers, it was still a struggle. And you do it if you love it. If not, you could probably make more, working somewhere at a normal job.
And we haven't even gotten into the whole Chat GPT thing.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, one thing about ChatGPT, it's super easy to see if somebody's using it to write
Oh, it
because
is.
the writing is just so flowery and it stays away from negatives and it just tries to put a positive spin on everything. And there are certain words it uses over and over and over again. So yeah, it's easy to spot ChatGPT writing.
That's good to hear.
Yeah,
Last
so
couple times
far.
I've done peer reviews and things for book publishers or journals or things, that there's all this material now about using or not to use Chat GPT,
Hmm.
blah, blah, blah. I remember this one journal had said something like, oh, no more than 30% of your article can be written by a chat or AI.
Well,
Like, wow,
you
okay,
can.
so 30%'s okay. I mean, what?
Well, it depends on what they mean. You can use it as a tool. Let's say
Oh,
you've written a paragraph and you think, gosh, that just doesn't quite sound right, or maybe I could clarify it a little bit.
yeah.
If you run it through ChatGPT, say tweak this a little bit to make it better. Feed your paragraph through that, and if it keeps your same writing but just words it slightly better,
Mhm.
some people are doing that, like maybe for journalistic work. Like if you've written an article for a newspaper and you think, I'm not super happy with this, or I've used the same word too many times, they might feed it through ChatGPT and say, tweak this a little. Because if you just get ChatGPT to write it, or if it edits it too much, it's going to be garbage. And
Oh yeah.
so most articles by legitimate publishers, you can read it and you think, oh, that was written by a real person. You can easily tell. But a lot of the stuff that you see that's just like somebody trying to crank out something real fast, it's just so obvious when it's Chat GPT.
Yeah, I thought you were going to mention all the bogus information that it gives you. Because remember when I first started hearing about it,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm sure you probably were the same when you're working on your books. Well, before that, before Wikipedia even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I mean, you would spend a lot of time trying to find the information that you needed, right? You might have to find the game
Absolutely.
manual. You might have to play the game a lot.
Yeah, and I
Yourself.
remember, just trying to get information from, I'd have the card only game I'm trying to review, and I
Yeah.
can't find the cartridge online anywhere. So I might order some manuals on eBay just to fill out my collection and have the manuals to go with because in the late 90s, early 2000s, manuals, now you can usually find the PDF or HTML for most, video games that are, just from mainstream systems. But then it was hard to find, manuals and things online. So I would buy group lots of manuals just to have information. And yeah, and I go back as far as, very early, in the early '90s when I really tried to start doing some writing seriously, and even in the '80s when I was just doing just a tiny bit. I remember calling the reference library or the reference desk at the library. Hey, when did this movie come out? What year? Because you literally had no way to find it. Now I've got a library of books. I've got my own library at home where I could find a lot of stuff. But there were certain stuff. You just call the reference desk at the library. You would ask them a question. If they could find it right away, they would. But if not, they would search for it on microfiche, or they would go to the card catalog, find the book, get you that information, and call you back an hour later and tell you this bit of information, which
Yeah.
just sounds like it might as well be the Pony Express compared to now. So yeah, it was harder to get information back in the day,
Yeah,
for
imagine
sure.
folks nowadays getting a phone book and trying to figure out some developers
Yeah,
cold calling them and being like, "Are you the guy that worked on, this?" And
right.
you might, two or three names before you got to the right person and stuff.
Yeah, and with travel too, like we would go, my wife and I would travel to a city we'd never been to before. Hey, let's go check out some bookstores and maybe see if they have a game shop. And so we would look through the yellow pages, find a few things, and figure out with our maps go what would be the best way to, the best route to take. And it was just primitive compared to now, just putting everything. That's my favorite two things about modern life, about technology, medical, obviously. I mean, you don't have to drink whiskey and have your tooth taken out by a farmer.
As fun as that sounds.
Yeah. And GPS. I mean, come on. Yeah. I mean, just being able to, especially with all this traveling we do, and being able to book your flight on your phone and all that kind of stuff. That's great. Travel and medicine, sure, that's great with technology, and also like YouTube a lot. Being able to watch all these old rock concerts,
Oh yeah.
but at the same time, there's definitely a certain magic that the '70s and '80s had before all this technology that's lost.
Well, what I was working up to was we did all that legwork.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I imagine you might have had this more than me. We'll see. Because you're kind of more of a reference focus for a lot of your
Right.
where we a lot of the vintage games is kind of similar, but with the later ones I kind of went in a different direction. But anyway, what I noticed was after I published a book for a few years, I'd be looking for something on Wikipedia, and I would see that they would reference my book,
Mm-hmm.
for the Wikipedia page, and I thought, oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool. I'm in Wikipedia. Look, they're like they're mentioning my book.
Yeah.
So I thought it was such a great thing. And then I got another review one day on my Amazon page, and somebody says, why buy this book when you can get the information on Wikipedia?
Yeah, that's funny. I know. I was tickled when some of my articles and books started getting referenced on Wikipedia. But there's a misconception sometimes with what you can find online versus what you can find in your book. So one of my books, one of my 100 greatest books, it's got so both of I've had 200 greatest books so far. This is the latest one. And in this book, so there's 100 essays about, games from 88 to 98. These are full-on essays by myself and other writers. They're filled with anecdotes that you won't find anywhere online.
Mm.
So one of the reviews on Amazon says every single thing in this book you can find online. That's objectively false because a lot of it is anecdotes, personal stories from when the games came out. Whether it was when I met my person I eventually married, we were playing this game. There's all this kind of stuff in there that's not about data or facts. Just like historical facts. It's anecdotes and stories.
Right.
And so that review is obviously wrong. So that's frustrating. And another review I had was, and Amazon refuses to take this down. The person ordering the book thought it was a game with they thought it was like a compendium, like a big game cartridge or something, or a disc or some kind of release. See, it's got the cartridge design. Somehow, this person that bought it thought it was a game with a bunch of ROMs or something. And so they gave it 0 stars because it's a book. And Amazon won't take that down. And so now, one of my books has 0 stars because the buyer was stupid.
No. I'm trying to get it. That book must be on Amazon. Why am I not finding it? Oh, it's not on Amazon.
100 greatest.
I got the 100 greatest for the regular.
Yeah, it's on there somewhere.
Nintendo.
All my books are on Amazon. There's
So this was the one that I'm looking at. This is probably sitting at home right now because I got the 2-day delivery.
Yeah, that was the first book in the series, the Kindle version.
So they thought this was a cartridge. I don't know if I got.
I don't
know if I have
just
a story
it's got
like
the design on there. I've been trying to get my publisher to make a soft cover version of this book. So far, it's only been published in soft cover, and I wish they would release it in soft cover and put an Atari 2600 cartridge design on it, just to and write a new forward and that kind of thing. Just have kind of a second edition of the book or an alternate edition in paperback. But
they could do a ColecoVision. That's your.
Oh, there you go. That'd be cool.
That was like your first console, right?
Yeah.
Pong, I guess, was your.
Well, the first time I ever played a video game was probably either Pong or Midway's Gunfight in the arcades in '75, and then Pong. My cousin had Pong in '75. Christmas had Atari's Pong in his house, and I played that. And that was the first time I played a video game in a house. And I was shocked because I didn't know you could play video games in a house. I thought you had to go somewhere. I thought you had to go to a store or a building or something to play a game. I didn't know you could.
But they wanted you to think.
Yeah. Well, I'd never heard of the Magnavox Odyssey from 1972. I don't recall ever seeing a commercial. None of my friends had it. Didn't know about it.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah, didn't find out till later. And I was 5 years old when it came out, and it lasted 2 or 3 years, a couple of years or so. Never knew about it. Even in the '77, I didn't find out about it probably till maybe the early '80s or something. I didn't know about it. Before nobody I knew had it.
That's a real interesting story. I got to talk to him, Ralph Baer.
Yeah.
On my show. And first started talking to him, I first started hearing him, like, is this guy kind of a crank, because he's saying he's like the father of video games. I mean, come on, it's Nolan Bushnell.
Yeah.
So I went in kind of just totally thinking this guy's, basically full of it. And by the end of that conversation, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a
180-degree turn on this. And like,
yeah.
Oh, I felt so bad. I felt like he's just been sort of ripped off, because he should be. I mean, I guess he's got some fame. He got like the Presidential Medal of Honor and all this stuff. But
and he's got a statue somewhere.
Yeah, he deserves to be way more celebrated, though, I think.
Yeah, as far as just inventing the concept of playing a video game on a TV. And but yeah, he's not as famous as Nolan Bushnell, because Nolan Bushnell was more of a pitch man. He was more vocal. He was more out front. He was more, just more visible than Ralph Baer.
Let's see, Brett. I know we're coming up on 4 o'clock, so I got some questions that were sent in here. Do you have time?
Yeah, let's do it.
A few quick shots.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. So, I think we kind of touched on this one already, but they were wondering, was there a lot less video games on the market when you started than there is today?
Meaning?
I think we could say for sure that there's more video games now than back in
Well, they've
the
published a whole
70s.
lot between now and then, so I don't know
Oh,
if that's
yeah.
what they mean. Oh, you mean, oh, like at one? I see what they're saying. Okay, so yeah, let's look at, say, the Nintendo Switch. There's been thousands of games on the Switch already. If you can count, downloads and independent titles, there's probably been over 1,000 physical releases. I have no idea, but like for the Atari 2600, there was 400 and something. So yeah, way more titles being published now than back in the day. I get what they're saying.
Okay, with your older classic home video games and complete reference guidebooks, what decided the cutoff years of 84 and 88?
That is a great question. So the cover dates can be a little confusing. So Classic Home Video Games, the first volume, 72 through 84. During that window of time, it covers all the consoles that were published during that time, from the Magnavox Odyssey in 72 up through 82 when the Vectrex, ColecoVision, and all that. And there really wasn't much in 83 and 84. It cuts off there. 85 was when the NES came out, test marketed in the US. So the next book, 85 to 88, covers that window when those consoles came out. The NES Master System and 7800 came out during that window of 85 to 88. Within each book is comprehensive. It has every game release, but it's that window of time when those consoles came out. So yeah, that book covers every single release for the NES Master System and 7800, regardless of when they came out. But that window of time is when those consoles themselves came out. Because in 89, then you've got the Genesis, TurboGrafx, Neo Geo era. And so the next book, 89 to 91, or 90, 89 to 90, is that window of time for those console releases. It's a little convoluted, but that's how the publisher wanted to do it.
Ace of Aces.
Yeah.
Well, the Atari 7800 and the Pro
Yeah.
system.
7800. Some people don't realize that it was sort of test marketed in 84. It was supposed to come out then, but it really came out full release in 86. So it's in this book, 85 to 88. It's actually in my first book too, but that's just to make the Atari people happy. So the whole trilogy of original consoles will be in there. But 85 to 88, the system officially came out in 86. So it's in there with the Master System and NES.
Yeah, so you got an entry on asteroids here.
Yeah, the 7800 Asteroids had a two-player simultaneous mode, which is really cool. It's a great version of Asteroids.
Right. Some of my students were complaining, even the game developers, about having to, or wannabe game developers, about having to take calculus. So I did a little research project to see what video games would require you to know calculus to be able to program, and asteroids actually was one of the ones.
Okay.
I forget the reasons, but something the way the ships moved and
Yeah, maybe because it's all angles and it leaves the screen. Yeah, I don't know anything about calculus, so I don't know, but that's interesting.
So apparently those guys are super smart, that made that. That's what I concluded. Okay, what is it about the library of games on the Nintendo systems that makes it a better focus for your omnibus books than Sega?
Well, that's a great question. I started off doing I just really, it was kind of a crapshoot whether I was going to do the NES or Super Nintendo or Genesis. So I just kind of started. Okay, I remember why I started Nintendo first. Okay, so the classic home video game series, the last one was covering systems released from 89 to 90. So I was planning on doing a fourth volume, which would be 91 to about 93. That would cover the Jaguar, Super Nintendo, CDI, and 3DO. That was going to be volume 4. But I decided to ditch that project, instead go to a full-on Super Nintendo book. And I just did a 2-volume Super Nintendo set. So that's why I went to Nintendo, because I'd already done all the earlier consoles, full reference guides. And I hadn't done a Super Nintendo book yet because it hadn't come out yet during those first 3 volumes that time period covers. So I went to Super Nintendo. So I thought, well, if I've done Super Nintendo, I guess I'll do NES next. And, because that seemed logical to have an NES omnibus and a Super NES omnibus. And then I started working on a Genesis omnibus, but then 2 book projects got shot down by Sega. One book was one book was completely written, and they ended up having to just publish it free as a PDF. So all that hard work they did, they could not publish a hardcover book because Sega went after them. Now, what I've come to understand that was in the UK, and both of those projects were UK. And apparently, Sega of America is more lenient, and you can do a Sega Genesis book without them caring. So I might at some point do a Sega Genesis omnibus. It's just not going to be anytime soon because I just don't have time. So
Gee,
yeah,
terrible.
yeah.
I realized Sega was, well, I mean, I
At
guess there's
least in
nothing,
at least in the UK, they took down two. They stopped two book projects
that's,
about
yeah,
the
because you always hear
Genesis.
about Nintendo being the
Yeah,
litigious.
and they haven't. They've been fine.
Yeah, I've never had any publishers contact me about any of my stuff, but
Yeah,
it's probably
right.
not as uh high.
Yeah, it's considered fair market because my books cover different companies because within the omnibus books, there's Capcom and all this stuff, and tied all
Yeah,
these other companies.
I mean, you're kind of like Leonard Malt. Was it Leonard Maltin with the?
Yeah, he was a huge influence. Leonard Maltin and Leonard Herman, two Leonards, were huge influences. As a kid, I voraciously read reference books. Even my parents' encyclopedia sets, they had a science one and a regular one. I would read those. And I loved books like The 100 Greatest This and That,
Mhm.
The 100 Most Important People in History. Bill Warren wrote a book on the 100 Greatest Science Fiction, or no, all the science fiction movies of the 50s. Reference books I love. So that definitely was an influence.
Yeah, I like the Leonard Maltin stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Just
So I mean,
capsule reviews of all these movies.
if he can do that with movies, why can't we do that with games?
Yeah, exactly. And Leonard Herman had the idea with ABC to the VCS. He did like a capsule description of every Atari 2600 game. And I thought, well, if he can do every 2600 game, I can do all the other consoles and the 2600. So I started that crazy book project. Although he doesn't review the games, he just writes just descriptions.
What's the name of this author?
Leonard Herman. He wrote the world's first really full-length video game history book. Leonard Herman, and you'll see his book
ABC to
Phoenix.
the
He wrote ABC to the VCS, which I wrote the forward to the new volume of it, the new edition of it.
Okay, I'm learning something here.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, there he is.
the-
Yeah, so I wrote that forward to the new edition of ABC to the VCS. But that book came out originally years ago, and it was the first complete reference guide to any home console. And so that book was a big influence on me.
okay, so it's on Amazon too.
Yeah, and he also wrote Phoenix, which was the first video game history book.
Now that one I've read.
Yeah, yeah,
Boy,
that's
that's
Leonard.
Phoenix 4 though. That's pretty
Yeah,
good.
Phoenix 4 is the latest volume, and he's working on Phoenix 5.
Must have just read the first one. Must have just been Phoenix 1, I guess.
Yeah, there's some very primitive looking editions of Phoenix that don't have pictures and have very plain covers, but he's definitely come into the new era with photos. He's got a color version and everything.
Where'd they get together with? See, he's still around, I hope.
Yeah, I still see him at shows. He just did the Long Island Retro Gaming Expo. I wasn't there, but I saw him. I still see him periodically at Gaming Con.
I'd love to see you two guys on the panel together.
Yeah, we did that one at Too Many Games, and that was great. I'd like to do another one for sure.
All right, let's see. Anything else here? What are your thoughts on the KISS Psycho Circus video game?
Oh, well, there was the Dreamcast and the PC version, and I didn't spend a lot of time with the Dreamcast one. Messed around with it a little bit, and just didn't really get into it enough to really play it a ton. And I still need to add it to my collection. The only KISS, see, it's weird with KISS. There should have been a 2600 game. There should have been an NES game. It's crazy if there's not. But I've heard Gene say some pretty disparaging things about video games in general, so that might play a role why there's been so few KISS video games. There was a KISS pinball game for the PlayStation, but it was unauthorized. So yeah, very, very little in the way of KISS video games. And Psycho Circus, I really didn't play it enough to give a good
I can't even get the pull up here. It's behind all these adult mature filter things. Is there something? Is it like an X-rated game?
No, it's just a typical game. Yeah, KISS Psycho Circus.
Yeah, I remember seeing a lot of the comics for KISS, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's a little weird that they don't have more of a game.
Yeah, and I think it's just Gene. I don't think he's into video games.
Damn you,
which is
Gene.
weird because he's heavily into other pop culture. He's a hardcore science fiction film buff, big comic book fan.
Make a list and whittle it down. Yeah. I think we've covered everything here. Just double checking. I think we've covered it all. I mean, some people might be curious about stuff like your favorite or which one. You have any regrets about missing out on one, or on a mission of some sort? Are there
Missing out on.
any little the console? I remember there was somebody asked about the Phantom console you most would have liked to have seen.
Meaning what?
Like a console that was supposed to come out but never
Oh, okay.
materialized. Maybe it was
Well, the
advertised
Intellivision
somewhere.
Amico. That's the one that I pre-ordered and that I had hoped had come out, and it turned into a big scandal where there was all this drama. Tommy Tallarico had promised big things, and
Oh yeah.
it originally sounded like a cool idea. And yeah, so it's too bad that never came out in physical form. You can play some of these games digitally, but I have no interest in that. And so yeah, it'd have been nice if that would have come out. That could have prevented a lot of angst and drama.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people that got burned by this.
Yeah, I did not early enough, but fairly early on when it really kind of everything started hitting the fan. I canceled my pre-order and I did get my money back, but I know a lot of people that canceled the pre-orders didn't get the money back, and I hated that. And I published a lot of pro Amico videos because I was just excited about the idea. I loved the television growing up, so I definitely had bias towards the idea of retro. I love retro reimagined. I love modern versions of old games because as a kid, when I was playing all these games, I was thinking about video games in the future, and I thought someday there's going to be a Pac-Man, and I could never envision, Call of Duty or God of War, anything like that. When I was as a teenager playing Pac-Man, okay, someday there's going to be a Pac-Man that just looks so much better than Pac-Man, but it's still going to be Pac-Man. Had no idea where the video game industry was going to take you. So I love the idea of retro reimagined classic games that are simple pick up and play but that have cooler graphics and more you have more things to do, more screens and stuff. So I love retro reimagined, and I thought the Amico would be cool. I thought it was a cool idea, and originally when the promises were more humble, but over time, Tommy just started making stupider and stupider claims, and he started blowing it up all out of proportion, making all these things he could never possibly come through with. And the company just got completely backwards. They rented out all this office space. They wasted money on all this promotional stuff before there was even a console. So they completely blew it. I don't think it was a scam at the beginning. I think they had intentions of putting out this console, but as things went along, it sort of turned into a scam because they started just fabricating all the stuff that the Amico could do or that the Amico would have, and it just went completely ballistic, crazy. And he started making all these promises that obviously he couldn't keep. So yeah, to answer your question, in television Amico, that would have been cool. But absolutely, the super game module for the ColecoVision. So the ColecoVision in '82, Electronic Games Monthly published some ad for something called the Super Game Module, sort of a little preview or something. Coleco canceled the Super Game Module. This was going to be something you could plug into your ColecoVision, better graphics, all the levels, the music, and everything, just better versions of these classic arcade games and more. And the Super Game Module, Coleco canceled it in favor of the Atom computer. The Atom computer was a bomb, the atom bomb. It failed spectacularly. So many were just faulty right out of the gate, bug ridden. So that pretty much killed Coleco and played a big role. And now there's a modern super game module that John Lester's company CollectorVision made. So that's one thing. But the original super game module from Coleco themselves never came out. And yeah, it was canceled.
And unless you said there's some ads about it somewhere, I'd like to look at those.
In Electronic Games magazine, there was a big, I think it might have even been a two spread page on it. And there was going to be, Coleco games, as great as those ports were, they were usually missing a level or missing the, animated cut scenes. Some of the music might have been missing. They might have been missing a character or two. Some of them were, kind of scrolling was choppy. As great of a system as it was, the Super Game Module promised so much more. It would have been awesome for that to come out.
Yeah, the Coleco Atom.
Yeah, so
I
those are
wonder
my
if this is
two.
it. Is this the ad you're talking about? I think I got the ad here.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes,
Heck
there's the
yeah.
super game module right above the system there. That I would look at that ad as a teenager and just drool, thinking how amazing it was going to be. Now they did have the driving module and the Atari 2600 expansion module and the super action controller there, but they never came out with the super game module, which I think may have changed. It may have made the ColecoVision last a while longer and been in pretty good competition with the NES, but it was canceled, and the Atom computer ruined Coleco.
Yeah, it's so funny how back then all the console makers seemed to think that bragging about how it's a computer is like this huge selling point. And you could like do a words, you can do word
Yeah,
processing on your console. I mean,
it was irritating for me because I didn't care anything about a computer. I just
you
wanted
can do
better.
your taxes on the Atari. I mean,
Yeah, grocery lists were a big touted thing. Yeah,
oh,
who
that's
cared?
useful.
Yeah, I just wanted consoles with, so that was very
Have you
annoying
never
for
been in the
me.
middle of the middle of Walmart or I guess Kmart back then? And like, oh, let me see. I got to check my grocery list. I need to find a plug-in for my PC Atari.
Well, you could supposed to be able to put it on there and then like print it out on your compute on your
You
printer.
got your
So I
Coleco
don't know.
Atom printer that you had to have to work the computer, right? Was that the?
Yeah, yeah, just crazy. I didn't care about any of this stuff. I just wanted consoles, and man, I was so bummed. It was like when the Flash died around the same time. My favorite superhero. It was a similar type of angst on my part. I was like, man, bummer. They're ruining my life.
I like the way you put that about the retro reimagining because I've often had that. I'm sure you have as well because like your memory of a game
hmm
looks so much better in your imagination or your memory than, and when you actually boot it up, you're like, this kind of sucks.
I still love those old games, but some of
Uh,
them definitely don't hold up as well as I remember playing them when I was younger. But I do like when they'll take a concept and just have an advanced version, with more screens, with more detailed graphics, with more, that kind of thing. Even back in the day, they would do that. Like, they had Pac-Man and they had Super Pac-Man, or they
mhm.
had Asteroids and they had Asteroids Deluxe, and then they had Blasteroids. So, and then N64, they had Robotron 64, like an advanced version of Robotron. So I love that kind of stuff. Qbert 3 for the Super Nintendo is an incredible sequel to Qbert. I love that kind of stuff when they take a concept, keep the similar gameplay, but add cool elements and things like that.
Yeah, I can make a lot better grocery list now with their
Right.
my grocery lists are in 4D. All
That's
right,
it.
Brett. Hey, this has been fun, but we're gonna have to do
Yeah.
this.
Heck yeah, I enjoyed it, man. I hope you'll get out to some of these gaming cons and set up or do a panel or
Yeah,
something. That'd be really cool.
definitely. And I'll put links to your books and everything, and it should be easy for people to find. And
That would be great, guys. You can check out my books on Amazon or brettweisswords.com. And if you don't care about books or anything, just give me a sub on YouTube. Just my name, Brett Weiss. Subs are free and they're very appreciated. And the
we can show
algorithm
you your
is a
channel.
beast, so subs are always appreciated.
Yeah, we can show you your YouTube channel here.
Cool, I appreciate it.
Let's see. There we go.
There I am.
Tales from our retro game. I've been doing this for a very long time.
Yeah,
That's on the one
so
where you're talking about your first game. That's on here somewhere, right? You talk about your first.
yeah, I think yeah,
Yeah,
there's
this one,
one.
my first video game.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that was one of my earlier videos. I had considered having a kind of a YouTube type name, like I was going with the Bretro Gamer, but yeah, and I was going to call my channel that. But
Oh,
Kelsey Lewin said, no. He goes, "You're an author. You need to have your name as your channel because to get your brand out there, your identity out there, your author name out there. So you should call your channel Brett Weiss." And so very wise words coming from a 20 something. And so I did that. I just called it my name.
I wish I'd have had enough somebody like that because when I did my YouTube channel, it was almost just as a joke.
hmm
Just well, I gotta call it something. I'll just Matt Chat, yeah, because my name's
Oh, there you go. Well, most channels do
look, in
have some
retrospect,
kind
I
of,
would rather have come up with something at least semi clever.
most channels have some kind of catchy name to them, seems like.
Yeah, I like this. I like the theme of that. It's
Thank
kind of
you.
comic booky too.
Yeah. I
And
love
Dory,
Tales
it
from the
kind of
Crypt
ties
and all
all
that
your
good
interests
stuff.
together and into a define.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, folks. Brett Weiss, Tales from a Retro Gamer, books, fiction.
All kinds of stuff.
Got it all.
Well, thank you
All
so
right.
much, Matt. This has been great.
Yeah, thanks again. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Take care.
And that's all for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Sorry about the delays on that. It's been kind of hectic around here, as you can imagine, the last few weeks of any semester. Not what you signed up to be a professor for, that I can assure you, but hopefully we're over the worst of that and we can start pumping out regular episodes. Got some really exciting guests lined up. I think you're really going to like some of the plans. I don't want to say the names yet just in case things don't work out, but man, we're getting pretty close to some pretty cool stuff here, so definitely stay tuned. Now remember, if you like this show, you watch this show, if you're watching this right now, I need you to do a little favor for me and Matt Bradley Shergi. There's a link in the show notes, actually a bunch of links that you can go to and support this show financially. So if you got a couple bucks lying around, $5 or $6, maybe you think, hey, this Matt Barton guy seems pretty cool. I'd like to have an ale with him at a local pub, so maybe you could just transfer that kind of feeling, that sentiment, into the form of a Patreon support option. So it's as little as $1, $2 a week or a month, $5 a month, whatever you can afford, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever the show is worth to you. But please don't hesitate. We're kind of wearing thin here. Things are getting kind of bleak, to be honest with you. So, I don't know what the future holds, but hopefully it will include you stepping up to the plate to keep this show running. It just so happens I've been watching this documentary about Mad Magazine. One of these, I don't know if you, well, I'm going to assume you're familiar with that, but how sad I was when you get that last issue and they're like, we're not making this anymore, just the funding is not there anymore, the demand is gone, and you think, man, I wish that before this happened, more people would have stepped up and said, you know what, we're not going to let this crap happen. No, hell no. We're keeping Mad Magazine in production. Just tell me where to sign. I'll do what I can. Get all the fans together and keep the magazine running. Well, I'll tell you what happens. If things come up, people get busy, people got other things they'd rather do with their time, or they forget about it, and then it's too late. And, it's gone forever. So we don't want that to happen to Matt Chat. So we don't even need nearly the funding of a big magazine. Just enough to keep the show on, the show in production. So dude, please take a few minutes, go to that link. You'll like the show a lot better if you're supporting it. You'll feel good. You can join the Discord. Really great stuff happening, but hey, we need your help. So don't wait. Don't put it off. Pause the video, go do that, come back, and we'll pick up with the news from the Matt Cave. All right, let's see what we got. A lot of good news, some sad news, unfortunately. I'll save the bad stuff for last. I don't know if that's a good strategy or not, but it is what it is. All right. So first, some happy items. So there's a new fantasy XCOM style tactics game. It's out now. It's called Slaves of Magic. This just launched on Steam. It's $24.99. It's from a small indie studio called Amethyst Dreamers. And it's about classic squad tactics design. You lead a resistance against the fake ancient gods. Sounds a little bit like Hercules. Managing regional bases with an adaptive AI that fights back with invading armies. Missions use small, fully customizable squads instead of fixed classes, giving it an experimental feel. Definitely one to watch if you're craving turn-based strategy with a dark fantasy twist. So much of this dark fantasy stuff going on right now, but you pick that up, $24.99. And then Tired Gaming Dad wrote in about some Valve hardware news. They've just dropped a trio of new hardware announcements for early 2026. We've got a redesigned Steam controller, a living room Steam machine PC, a living room Steam machine. So it's kind of fun to say. And then a VR headset called the Steam Frame. The controller brings trackpads, gyro, and magnetic sticks. Steam machine aims for 4K 60 big screen gaming, and the Steam Frame lets you play VR, non-VR with inside-out tracking. So I don't know if we've got prices on any of this yet, but apparently it's pretty exciting. So stay tuned for that. I think out of all of that, the living room Steam Machine PC sounds kind of cool. I might have to check that out. I use an Xbox One X or whatever the hell they call that thing for that purpose. But that's great if you want to play Xbox games, but sometimes you think it'd be nice to play your Steam stuff in the living room. All right, and then lastly, we've got Northgard, a Viking-themed real-time strategy game where you build clans, explore a hostile continent, and compete for territory and survival. Getting a big Definitive Edition update on December 4th. This is Shiro Games. So they're adding, early clan DLCs, including Snake, Horse, and Dragon, plus the Cross of Vidar campaign, and all this for free if you own the game. New biomes, making this essentially the game's final form. So I haven't played this, Northgard, but apparently I've been missing out. They're saying this is like one of these under or overlooked gems that maybe we don't find out about until it's 2 or 3 years down the road and the company is kaput. So maybe this would be a good chance to check it out. Maybe throw some support behind these guys, this game, see what it's all about. As far as I can tell, it's kind of a Settlers-like game. It's one of my favorites Amiga games of all time was the Settlers. So there's been a lot of later games that kind of built on that formula. And this looks like it's at least in the same ballpark, the same realm, as it were. Let me know what you think if you played Northgard. I'd like to get your take on it, but it looks pretty good. By the way, I've been playing that Black Geyser game a little bit. And that's the Baldur's Gate style, original Baldur's Gate Infinity Engine kind of a game. I gotta say, it hasn't really done much for me yet. Kind of a long wind up, and I'm hoping that it will hook me pretty soon because I like the engine setup and everything. But if you played more of it than I have, I'd be curious at what point did it sort of peak? Does it kind of start off slow, but then it suddenly gets really good, or what's going on with that game? But yeah, I always say I can kind of judge a game by how quickly I'm fighting rats after I launch the game for the first time, and it's taken a while for that to do anything. So we'll see. And then that sad news I was telling you about. So this is just. I guess it's not as bad as it could be. We're still hopeful, but things are looking pretty bleak, pretty serious for Becky Berger Heinemann, Rebecca Heinemann, of course, a long-term friend of the show, big supporter of the show, as we're supporting her, trying to as well. So she's got a GoFundMe campaign to help her deal with some medical issues, medical conditions, and this was posted. There's a new update on her GoFundMe site, saying that they've moved her to the ICU at Rockwell Hospital, and she's being airlifted to St. Luke's Medical Center in Houston. That's a top lung cancer facility, but that's a very expensive transfer. I think it's $20,000 they need for funding for her. So yeah, that's some very serious stuff. She's been diagnosed with, I don't know anything about medicine. I don't even know how to pronounce this, but an aggressive adenocarcinoma. It spread to her lungs and liver. She's been bedridden. I mean, it's just really, it's really sad and terrible, and we want to, do whatever we can for her. So, yeah, what I'll say is, I know I just kind of pitched Matt Chat a minute ago, but if you've got enough some extra funds, please go check out Rebecca Heinemann's GoFundMe campaign. If you can't afford to support both me and her, go with her. Okay. Hers is a life and death situation. This is just a YouTube show. So definitely do that. At least look into that. I'll post the links to that. And do I need to say who Becky is? I hope not, if you've been watching this channel for a while. She's done work on Bard's Tale, Dragon Wars, Fallout, Doom console ports. She's got the Old School that she was doing with her wife, sadly deceased, Janelle, who's also got a lot of tragedy, but yeah, they're good people. They need your support, so please do go look at that link. All right. Well, if I can transition from that into something a little bit different, let's say, the quote I like to wrap up with a quotation, and I was trying to find quotes that would be sort of uplifting, and so we didn't have to end on such a sad, state of mind. But I found this. This is Corey Ten Boom as the quoter, the creator of this quotation, and she's got a pretty interesting life as well. Helped Jews escape during World War II. I think she was a Dutch, sort of a Dutch heroine, if you will. But the quote goes something like this: "Worry does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength." Very profound words indeed. So ponder on that, and I'll see you guys next time.
How about a couple of eggs sunny side up?
I have no eggs. Perhaps you can direct me to a chicken.